Well, the real beauty is we didn't have a business plan.
Good thing this isn't a business podcast.
Yeah.
There was no plan.
There's
Yeah.
no plan.
Except to listen
Except
and
to
to
listen.
see how we could be of service.
If it's not a yes, it's a no. And so that means maybes or no's. And if you actually like superimpose that over your life, you'll see just how difficult it is to live by yeses. You'll find all the times you're actually living in a no state, which just means you're out of alignment.
Which has a lot of negative repercussions for future decisions. In fact, you living no's actually clouds your ability to see yeses in the future.
That was Deva and Eaden Shantay, and they are today's guest on the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. And my name is Dr. Benjamin Alter. For those of you who do not know me yet, I'm the host of this podcast and a licensed naturopathic doctor offering holistic lifestyle medicine worldwide via our online platform at www.alter.health. Head on over there to learn more about what we've got for you. But if it's your first time stopping through, hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Whether you're in Carbondale or the surrounding Roaring Fork Valley, or you're somewhere else on planet Earth, I'm happy to be connected with you. And today is the first day of our Locals series on the Alter Your Health podcast. Local meaning Carbondale, Colorado, and the surrounding Roaring Fork Valley, which is where Dr. Susanna and I now call home. We moved here in the beginning of 2019, and it's amazing that 2019 is coming to an end. And after moving here, I had the idea, the inspiration, the thought of connecting with some of the amazing people locally in this community, sharing conversations to spread in the world and bring some awareness to the amazingness that is in our backyard. And there's amazingness everywhere. And that's what this podcast is all about, connecting with some awesome people, inspiring people, doing extraordinary things. And I believe that we are all awesome, extraordinary people doing amazing things in the world. And it's just a matter of connecting and aligning with that authenticity inside of ourselves, sharing our unique tools and gifts and experiences with the world. That's what it's all about. That's an important part of our health. And I'm excited to dive into this conversation with two lovely people based locally here in Carbondale, Colorado, Deva and Eaden Shantay. If you don't know them yet, you are certainly in for a treat. They are the co-founders, co-creators of True Nature Healing Arts, which is a local healing arts center here in Carbondale, Colorado. And it's really hard to describe how amazing this place is. Truly, it's so beautiful. It's like an oasis here in Carbondale. Not that Carbondale really needs an oasis, because I feel that Carbondale is an oasis in and of itself. But that being said, they have an amazing yoga studio, amazing classes and workshops that are always happening, a beautiful garden, a labyrinth, a reflexology experience when you're walking in the garden barefoot, and an amazing little cafe and gift shop that is just filled with really inspiring and beautiful art. It's just a wonderful energy, a vortex kind of place, if you will. And we talk about that to some degree in this conversation with Deva and Eaden, how they have co-created this place really without any sort of plan. Like you just heard, they just kind of have been following their hearts, showing up in life, asking that question, how can I be of service? And that's how they are of service, just by continuing to say yes to what is a yes and to say no to anything that is not a yes. And the natural byproduct of that is creative expression, is living aligned, is being on purpose. So that's what this conversation is all about. Another theme that we talk about is really the synergy that the opportunity, I should say, of being in relationship with ourselves and others and having that synergy to support our unique expressions and the opportunities that relationships bring to kind of shine light on some blind spots and maybe support one another in accessing and expressing the fullness of who we are. Once again, a really important part of holistic health. So I'm so happy to engage in this conversation and share it with you. And if you would like to learn more about Deva and Eaden Shantay, you can certainly do so by heading over to truenaturehealingarts.com. Deva is a yoga therapist, a yoga teacher, and an intuitive, as you'll come to know. And Eaden is a yogi as well, a meditation teacher, really loves sharing yoga philosophy, ancient yogic wisdom, and they are just lovely people offering some lovely experiential workshops and educations and experiences at True Nature Healing Arts and beyond. I know they've got an upcoming workshop next spring down in Costa Rica, which sounds amazing, but I just learned that it's actually full, so we'll have to wait until next time to get an immersive experience with these two. This is an audio visual experience. We do have a YouTube channel, Alter Health, that goes along with this podcast, so wherever you're tuning in from, you can just hit the subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment, and share with someone who you know and love, someone who might feel inspired by connecting with this as well. So before we dive into this conversation, I'll just invite you to take a breath, put your feet on the ground, be here now, and enjoy this conversation with our guests, Deva and Eaden Shantay. Well, thank you both so much for having me in this beautiful space and being open to share a conversation on the Alter Your Health podcast. I'm so happy to be here and to be connected with you guys here in lovely Carbondale and at True Nature Healing Arts. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
And thanks again for having me. So like I was just sharing with you, Deva, I have two approaches to podcasting and to interviewing guests. One is to, intellectualize and understand who I'm talking with beforehand and study them and figure out what questions I need to ask. And then the other approach is to just let that go and be present and connect and share what's, present in the moment. So I've chosen the latter route with the two of you. I really don't know who you are so much and what your journeys have been like, other than this creation that we're in the midst of right now. So I'd love to just know a little snippet from each of you in terms of the life journey that has led you to be here in Carbondale and to co-create this space that myself and so many people enjoy every single day. Who would like to start?
Well, I went to school in the mid-'80s at CU Boulder and really loved that. I then moved back to Michigan, and then my first wife and I moved to Telluride in 1999. We then separated. She went to the Front Range. I was in Telluride, and we had a young daughter. And so as a compromise, we met in the Roaring Fork Valley, both to live so that we could be with my daughter Sedona. So that's how I came to this valley in terms of True Nature Healing Arts. My own journey of addiction, depression, and just challenge, my own suffering in a sense, led me to seek personal growth. It was first through therapy, actually at the University of Colorado, and later Native American spirituality. Of course, reading a lot of self-help books at that time, and eventually getting my own degree in clinical psychology just due to my own interest in this process of personal growth and evolution. So True Nature essentially was born because of my love for community and self-discovery and creating sacred space for people to journey inward. And so that's how True Nature was born for me. And I'll let Deva share how it was born for her.
Great.
Well, for me, I found the valley because I was living in Chicago and was really tired of the concrete jungle. And so I pretty much just said, I can't do this anymore and I have to head west. And that's all I knew. That was all that was on my radar, was get out of here and head west. I had 2 kids at the time. My oldest was 5 and the youngest was just about to turn 2. And as we were heading west, my goal was to go all the way to the ocean and to be by the water and that. And then 3 random people told me to stop in Carbondale, Colorado. And so whenever it comes in threes, I listen. And I pulled into town. I parked right at Peppino's Pizza downtown, and I turned my head and I saw True Nature, and it was the first one on Main Street that Eden had started up. And I turned my head and I said, I've got to go see what that is. And that's when I met Eden. He was sitting outside of True Nature. He's the first person I met when I came into town. And I didn't leave Carbondale from that point on. There was something that drew me here, and I stayed. And so now I'm here.
What year was that?
He knows years.
2009.
2009.
2009, yeah.
So the 2 of you crossed paths in 2009, and True Nature for you, Eden, was born in
2007.
2007.
Yeah, it was a single 500 square foot, a single room space for yoga. And I I offered therapy sessions, psychotherapy, also hypnotherapy, meditation, some of the things that I felt passionate about, and workshops. So it was this single room place that.
So you 2 crossed paths in 2009, and share with me the last 10 years, I guess it has been, because we're obviously not in a 500 square foot space on Main Street.
No.
We're in this incredible oasis in Carbondale. Not that Carbondale needs an oasis, but it does serve that role. So share the last 10 years of the evolution of this True Nature journey.
Well, the beauty is that Eden and I are opposites in pretty much every single way out there. And so opposites create this beautiful friction that allows for, amazing creation and growth. And we have different skill sets where I have a lot of art and design in my background, and he is super skilled with building and just making that whole process happen. And I've got the yoga background, and so I'm super inspired by all of that. And he comes from a lineage of his dad was a builder and his mom was in the arts. And so you bring the 2 of us together, and it just created this amazing energy to foster this creation and growth. And it's been nonstop. We've had the longest slowdown period of building as of late. We haven't done any building since the Kiva opened, and that's been
a year and a half.
Yeah, that's the longest spell in our 10 years together of not building.
Although we are finishing the east end of the Peace Garden right now.
We are.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's just been, I don't know. I was drawn here for a reason. I didn't pick Carbondale. Spirit picked Carbondale for me. And it was obvious that I was intended to meet Eden, and we were intended to come together and create.
When you say it was obvious, share with me what that obviousness looked like or felt like. Because I think that we all kind of connect with that divine intervention, that feeling. but if you could articulate it.
Yeah, whenever something happens in threes, I always listen. I'd love to get to the point that I listen on the first time it happens or the second, but by the time it's the third, it's like, okay, I've got to pay attention. But, Eaden and I coming together, it wasn't this love at first sight, we're together kind of a thing. We actually met in the dream.
It was for me. No.
But we actually met, came together in the dream state where we both had a dream on the same night. And it was after that dream that we started talking to each other.
So this dream was a shared reality sort of experience. Mm-hmm. And what was the dream?
In the dream, he came to me and asked if he could have me. That's what my part of the dream was. And it shocked me because I said yes in the dream. And normally that hadn't happened for me, that I would do that. And you want to share your side of it?
Well, I was actually visiting a friend in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and I was in a hotel room, and I just had this incredibly vivid, lucid dream, which David described, and it was so profound that I remember telling my friend Jamie about it the next morning.
So you had the dream approaching Deva, asking,
yes,
can I have you?
Oh, it was the same exact dream. And it took place sometime after, I don't know the exact day, but sometime after a February 14th sweat lodge that happened up at my place in Lanedo. And in that sweat lodge, Deva offered a prayer that she wanted love. And right after that prayer, it was as if a beam of light shot between us that really...
It was an actual spark. It was like the spark went between us when the door opened from the lodge, that it was something I couldn't ignore, but I didn't understand it. And I was wondering, what was that?
And how long after was this was the initial meeting of you two?
Well, physical meeting when I pulled up in front of True Nature.
Right.
That was probably a couple months.
That was right before Mountain Fair, so that would be in late July.
Yeah. And then I was teaching at True Nature, but he wasn't there a lot. We didn't interact together at all. It was the sweat lodge, which I was drawn to go to, and then the dream happened maybe a few days after the lodge or a week after the lodge. Mm-hmm. And that's when I had to find out what that dream was, and I went to his meditation class just to kind of see what happened. What was that? That's when we started talking.
The dream happened before you started talking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's even more of a, has more power to it for me.
I mean, we had simple passing conversations, but I didn't run the yoga program. I actually hired a person to manage the yoga program, so David was teaching in the yoga program, so she interacted with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. And obviously the two of you coming together, it's like, without knowing either of you too well yet, it's like true synergy in that the creation, I think we can feel it, and that the energetic creative potential that's coming through you guys and shared through you guys. When did you have that insight, both of you, that your meeting and this dream, it's all for this greater purpose?
Well, that was more gradual, I would say, after those experiences, which led us to begin conversation with each other. One other piece that I'd like to share about those experiences was at the sweat lodge. Deva had also, now I know her, but she had never felt supported in her life. And at the closing circle of that particular sweat lodge, we were standing in a circle, And she began to kind of rock, almost as if she was going to pass out. And she actually did. And 3 or 4 of us caught her before she hit the ground. And she later shared with me and others that was the first time in her life she had ever felt supported. And so one of the things that I've been able to give Deva is support, especially around her intuitive gifts, because her intuitive gifts were something that the family and culture within which she grew up weren't very accepting of those gifts. And so I grew up in a family that was very open to that type of experience. And so it was quite natural for me to support and encourage Deva to bring forth her gifts that she had kind of pushed within for many, many years. And then what she offered me was, especially with addiction, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, and there's a great need to hide for most addicts. And so I led most of my life in seclusion, essentially. I was certainly interacting with people, but there was a part of me, my dark side, my shadow side, that I was ashamed of, that I was hiding. And for the first time in my life, I had someone in Deva who was an intuitive, who could see what most people can't see. And so while I was able to give her support, she was able to give me the great support of being seen and the courage and strength to call me out on that which she was seeing, which was very hard for me for many years in the relationship, because I didn't want to be seen and I didn't want to be called out on the things that I were doing that were against Dharma. Mm-hmm. But yet, because I loved her so much, it allowed me to stay in a situation, stay in the hot seat, so to speak. And my life has changed immeasurably because of being seen and her willingness to share with me, because she is so impeccable with Dharma, with right action. And as she likes to say, she's got that bird on her shoulder telling her what's right and what's wrong, and I often don't. And that's true for a lot of people who are addicts. And so with her, I've had someone being that voice of consciousness to say, hey, this is where you're in alignment and this is where you're out of alignment. And to be honest with you, it saved my life. I consider her my lifeline.
It's powerful. What I hear and feel in your sharing is the professional creativity, for lack of a better, is really the byproduct of your own personal finding of wholeness and healing for both of you, it sounds like. And you've been kind of a perfect match to support one another's growth and healing on that personal level, which leads you and provides the space to cultivate and co-create together from that pure space. So I've got to know, Deva, more about this suppressed intuition that has been, sounds like, blossoming or flowing through you since meeting Eaden.
Yeah, it's been I've had the sight since I was very, very little. I always remember seeing people. I never had the privilege of growing up.
Like seeing me like a year ago and remembering me, because that was I remember you, but you're Deva, you're the creator of True Nature, right. So it's like okay for me to remember you, but you remember just some guy in your place.
Yeah. Names I'm not so good with. Faces, energy of people, I know. Yeah, I never got to grow up feeling alone. Like most people go into their room so they can be alone. I never had that. I always had people in my room. And so that automatically makes you not do anything bad because you're being watched all the time. I mean, I always...
people not in physical form.
They're not in physical form.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. But to me, like I started to figure out other people couldn't see them. and I was the only one seeing them. And I tried to ask for help, like saying, I'm seeing somebody in my room. And then, you're told you're just seeing something, go back to bed,
Yeah. So was it really seeing, or was it feeling, or was it both?
It's all of it.
Oh, yeah.
I have an extremely sensitive system where I see, I hear, I feel. Taste is my weakest, but smell, very high.
Now, I just have to interject here that, food is one of my primary addictions. So it's just interesting, we're talking about opposites. Mm-hmm. And she's saying taste is her least sensitive sense. Well, it's the one that I have used the most in my process. Mm-hmm. She also has very thin skin. Like her skin is paper thin, mine is thick.
Like literally and figuratively, or? Yeah,
because when you're thin-skinned, you're more sensitive.
Me too. I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, because my skin is very thin. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I have kind of thick skin in that I'm not really affected by what people say, but I do feel very sensitive to what you're talking about.
There's a density that when you're more dense, you're just not going to pick up on the more subtle vibrations as much as somebody that isn't very dense. And so, having other people not perceive what I was perceiving made me start to think I was crazy and that there's something wrong with me, because nobody else is seeing this, but I'm seeing and I'm hearing things. So I did my best to block it, and I did a pretty darn good job of shutting it off through most of my adolescence until I found yoga. And that's when it started to open it back up. And the whole reason I found yoga, and this is a whole nother podcast, but I had to face my own death. I had a near-death experience where I had to face my death, and I came off that mountain and realized I had to completely change my life. And that's when my life changed, and that's when I took my first yoga class. And that's when I started to go down this path.
And this was before the road trip west.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's partly what inspired the road trip west. Mm-hmm. The road trip west was a part of this awakening.
Well, I'm just curious, what flashed into my consciousness was like astrological happenings. Are you attuned to that level? Because I've heard a lot of stories of near-death experiences, road trips, finding yourself.
Well, it was all during my Saturn returns years. Yeah. It's all of it happened within there, and it was redirecting me because I was off course and I needed to be redirected back on. And so, finding yoga, my first training when I went, it was my teacher in the training that put her hand on my heart, and she said, I don't know who hurt you, but we're going to open this up. And that was the moment that I realized somebody could look at me and see my pain, because I thought I was hiding it. That was the moment that I started to open. And that's when my intuition started to kick back on. But I still didn't tell anybody about it, because it just was really scary. I've got past life stuff where I was not treated well for being, a seer. And so in this lifetime, it's been very difficult for me to openly state what I see and hear and feel and know. But that's why he came into my life. He's the first person to come in and say, you got to keep going with this. This is who you are. And you've got to trust it and step through. So
I'm also making incredible amends because a few lifetimes back, I killed her and her family. So that's another piece to the story.
We have karma.
So share with me, for myself, who's not a master expert at attuning with past lives and that sort of stuff, share with me how you've gained that insight and how you use that insight in past lives, past karma, to direct you in your present life, present dharma, I think those are,
Yeah.
you can correct me and guide me in this. But yeah, how do you gain that insight and use it?
Well, that's what I see.
Mm.
And so, how do I gain it? I don't know. I'm born with it. I can see.
Well, how does someone who doesn't know it or see it maybe gain it or open up to what past lives might have to offer their present?
Well, it's difficult. Can you teach somebody to be intuitive? I don't know. It has to be part of like your path here to have certain levels of sensitivity. Can you make people more sensitive? Yes. But that's by living a clean dharmic life. Your sensitivities will naturally come up. The foods you eat, are they, helping you or hurting you? Physically, are you taking care of yourself and your activity level? Are you surrounding yourself with healthy people or toxic situations? And so the cleaner our choices get, the more you're able to tap into the energy that's available to you. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily believe that I don't believe I can teach Eden to see past lives like I can. It's just I don't have certain filters like other people have.
It's just not my karma.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We all come in with a karmic set. It's like there's a whole karmic bank account that we have from all of our lifetimes. And in each particular incarnation, we're living out a very thin slice of our karmic pie, so to speak. And so that pie is going to have certain characteristics to it. Our personality, our fears, our desires, the way that we look, the family that we're born into. And so all of that, in a sense, is predetermined. And part of what Deva's gift is to sit with someone and to help reveal that karmic slice that's present so that they can actualize the reason that they came here. We all are coming here to process and purify and live our karma. And so that's for me what true north is. And to sit with someone like Deva, she can help me or a person discover what their dharma is so that they can live it. Because when we live our dharma, we not only feel happiest because we're actually living out the purpose for which we were designed, but we're also making a contribution to the whole without even trying, because Ishwara, the Great Spirit, the creator, the intelligence of the field, is actually the one who has the intelligence to determine which slices are being presented so that there's balance within the whole.
I really like what was said about sensitivity and intuition, for lack of a better term, just being a byproduct of being aligned kind of and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of people, myself is sometimes included, have a tendency to try to force, and which sounds really silly in verbalizing it, like forcing intuition or like show me the way,
right right,
and
give me a sign.
I think we all have some connection with that reality of just trying to force the way, but understanding and remembering that the way is just a byproduct and naturally clarifies and crystallizes as we live our most aligned life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like yoga, for example, all the different facets of yoga, not just physical yoga, but they're all meant to purify the mind, to settle the emotions, to reduce the load in our backpack of our fears and desires so that we can hike up that mountain with more light and more clarity, more peace. And so I love what Deva is sharing in that the yoga that we share here at True Nature Healing Arts, whether it be the yoga philosophy or yoga asana and everything in between, is designed to bring about more sattva, more peace, more clarity, so that people can see with greater sensitivity. So,
yeah. I'd love to know some other defining points in your life's journey that allowed you to have this insight and clarity and connection to living what I would call a very intentional life, rather than just, going through the motions. You two are obviously making really intentional actions and decisions every day, I imagine. So what has supported you, experiences or books or lectures or teachers of any sort? What have supported you in connecting with that intentionality in your lives?
Well, the important thing is, I think sometimes people look too hard to find guidance for how to move forward.
Like what I was saying, give me a sign, that kind of thing. Just
or
the force.
like even you mentioned, like, what teachers came to you. We can be taught by things that you wouldn't think are actually a teacher.
Like when the student is ready, the teacher
appears.
That's a thing, right?
Yeah, because it's like, I read a lot of books, and I don't go into a bookstore and stand there and search for a book. I let the books come to me, and they come to me by somebody saying, you should read this. Okay, I'll put it in my list. 3 times. Or I'll see it. And so the way you start trusting your intuition is, like, let's say I'm scrolling on Instagram and Oprah has a new book and it pops up. If I get a hit of, ooh, I'm kind of interested, that's your intuition. And it's saying there's something in that for you. So I trust it. But then when I open the books, if I read for 10 or 15 minutes and I'm not captivated, it means that book isn't for me right now. I put it away and I get another book out. But I don't sit there and force myself to read something because I think I should or something. If we're listening to our intuition, we'll move on. Because if it's in alignment, it's going to flow and it's going to feel aligned.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, what I think of is, like, on the contrary side of that, people are going through school, going through master's programs and PhD programs and forced to digest this material that might not be in that flow. So are there any ways to get in flow with what might not be in the flow? Or to flow better with what is?
Well, here's a very easy statement. It's not easy to live by, but it's easy to understand. If it's not a yes, it's a no. And so that means maybes or no's. And if you actually, like, superimpose that over your life, you'll see just how difficult it is to live by yeses. You'll find all the times you're actually living in a no state, which just means you're out of alignment. And alignment
which has a lot of negative repercussions for future decisions. In fact, you living no's actually clouds your ability to see yeses in the future.
Talk me through how that might happen.
Simply, let's say you're with a friend. Hey, do you want to go to dinner? And you get this feeling of, kind of, like,
I guess, sure,
maybe. That's really a no.
I've got nothing better to do.
And the reason it's a no is because it wasn't a yes. And so the way that I teach people to understand what are yeses, because the hardest part is we don't know. And we don't know because we've been living in no's. So you have to find your yeses. And maybe there's a special piece of chocolate that's a yes. Well, you enjoy it, you eat it, and you understand, you start to take in, what does a yes feel like? When I eat this chocolate, it feels so good. I settle, I relax. Oh, that's a yes. Or you picture circumstances. Hey, you want to go to Fiji tomorrow? I've got a free ticket. Yes. You start to envision these things of, what would you say yes to? What is a yes? But then you need a partner. And the reason why we are able to grow and work on our stuff is because we have somebody that's mirroring back to us. And so you need somebody that'll remind you, is it a yes? Because when somebody asks you that question, you'll know if it's a no. Because you'll be like, no, it's not a yes. Well, then it's a no. Move on. But it's our social constructs. It's we feel like we have to say yes to people, or we're letting them down. All that stuff, it just clouds us, and it's not beneficial.
And there's mental and emotional repercussions to making no decisions.
And probably physical as well. And
physical as well. So there's present moment repercussions, which is how you feel in the moment based upon the decisions that you've made, the actions you've taken. And then there's latent responses, which go into the subconscious and then are born at later times, or they manifest at later times. And you're not going to know if that's a minute, or 5 minutes, 5 days, or 5 years, or 5 lifetimes later. But from yoga philosophy teachings, there are two results. One's immediate and one's latent. And so those latent results can come in the form of physical sickness, emotional imbalance, thoughts that are spinning in your mind, confusion, which once again are going to cloud your ability to see reality clearly and make a good decision.
Yeah, I love this topic of tuning in, listening to really what's in our highest good. And it's, for me personally, such a process, of that fine tuning. And I'm curious what you guys think of this. I sometimes use like a pendulum or like my body as a pendulum. Talk to me about tools that help you navigate that yes, no inside of yourself.
Tools are great.
Yeah.
I think that the tool is the first level of us learning how to feel and how
Getting
to tap
that
in.
outside feedback, like, okay,
Yes.
this is a yes. Yeah.
And, know, and we'll use them from time to time. Eaden definitely will pull out the pendulum more than I really do. Because, my sensitivity is when something's off, it's so off for me. But everybody else thinks it's not really off.
So I'm curious,
She's got serious GPS when it comes to Dharma. I'm working with old style maps still.
You're totally tuned in. So I'm curious, Eaden, sometimes do you like call up Deva and
Absolutely.
ask for...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to share is the inverse of what I shared is also true. I shared that by making no's, you actually cloud your ability to see whether it's a yes or a no in the future, just because your ability to perceive is distorted by sense, emotion, thought, distortion in terms of previous actions that you've taken. The inverse is also true. By taking more and more yeses, by acting with greater and greater dharma, taking right action with right attitude, you actually then clarify your ability and you begin to be more subtle and able to take better choices in the future. So both biofeedback loops are available to us. One spirals downward, the other spirals upward. One goes into the dark, into the shadow, one goes into the light. And every moment of our lives, we have choice in terms of what we're going to focus our mind on, what actions we're going to take, what words we're going to say, what we're going to expose our minds to in terms of entertainment and news and all of that. Right now I really struggle with news and news addiction because there's so much going on in the world right now, especially in our own country. There's a part of me that feels, oh my God, I've got to know exactly what's happening so that I can stay safe or take the right action in the future. And when I take those hour-long, day-long news fasts, it's like I have the ability then to be much more present with my family, take better action, and make a difference in the world, starting inward and with my family and community that's right here.
Yeah, that's powerful. You guys mentioned a couple times how you're opposites. I'm curious about like really what you mean and how that reveals itself. And it sounds like it definitely supports things creatively, but I'm curious if things ever clash and how clashes are navigated. On speaking for myself, I'm pretty. Oh, good. All right, we're getting somewhere. I'm pretty fiery, and astrologically and otherwise, and my wife is pretty watery. And I remember one of her mentors said, "Oh, fire and water, that makes steam," and so I think that was meant on like a creative way.
Sure.
Like there's a lot of potential here. So I'm curious, what your signs are, what your energies are, and how they clash and how they support and complement one another.
Well, it's building together, going into construction. That's the first question was, how are you guys doing? Because it can make or break a relationship by building.
You're talking about this space kind of stuff, yeah.
This space, our house, everything we've built, it can be very difficult. One thing that has always anchored us is if it's not a yes, it's a no. That yes has to come from both of us. And so that creates challenges because Eden loves brown. Just so you know, when he builds, if he could have brown on brown on brown, he would have every shade brown. And I come in and I want to put in color.
Very earthy.
And so there's these interesting things where you find where you're set and you have to compromise. The one way that we were able to do it with this building project is by saying, if we both don't agree, it doesn't happen. We have to find a different way altogether that's different than us, which means that it's not like one of us can put our foot down. It just doesn't happen if we both don't agree. So that's one way we worked on it, with trying to create together, because it's challenging. We are different. We have different likes and dislikes. And he's got a temper. I don't. He has a temper. Yeah. There's our opposites. And that temper can go quickly.
And I have difficulty accessing my emotions and sharing them, which leads to the teapot temper, issue. And so Dave is a really good communicator in our relationship. I'm a good communicator socially at True Nature. Like my job is to be a host here. And my Enneagram point as a 2-point is perfectly designed for me to connect with other people and be a host at True Nature. But when it comes to our relationship, I tend to be quiet. And Deva is, so she communicates much more. So that's a way that we're opposite as well. I tend to be also Ayurvedically much more down here in the earth and water elements, which is kapha, and some pitta, which is the central element of fire. And Deva's more in the fire and up into the air and the space, which is the vata. So on the spectrum of elements in Ayurveda, we're also opposed.
But he's Virgo. He's an earth sign. I'm Sag. So it's we have so many differences. And then, I can take on more of a masculine approach to things, even though I'm the feminine, and he can be the soft feminine at times, So it's just this interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
Which is me moving into the 4-point on the Enneagram, which is the relax point. And Deva's
relax point for you as a 2.
For me, and Deva's a solid 1-point. And I know we're not getting into the Enneagram.
Yeah, but I'm familiar, but it's only familiarity for me.
But what I can say about...
the 1 point is this. It's just like the finger of the 1. This is the 1. We don't bend. It's straight. It's arrow.
It's Gandhi.
Yeah,
Gandhi.
It's clear,
total
direct,
morality.
determined.
She's really got super GPS radar sonar for morality. and which is a great thing. I mean, she doesn't stray, you know.
So back to True Nature and your creation of this masterpiece. You know, I really feel it is, you know, when my wife Susanna, she came through town a few years ago and I wasn't with her, and she was visiting some friends here, and she brought me a mug from True Nature with the, you know, Flower of Life logo. Before, I guess there was a rebrand relatively recently. And she said, you know, you've got to come back to this place. You got to check this place out. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, I've been to plenty of yoga studios. I lived in LA for a couple of years. Like I know what a cool yoga studio is, but you know, fast forward a couple of years, I did. And like I said, even in the midst of beautiful Carbondale, like this stands out for us as a total oasis. And like, walk me through the creation of this, you know, the physicality of it, the beauty that we all experience, and also just the deeper mission of serving the community.
Well, the real beauty is we didn't have a business plan. This wasn't a... we
business,
went opposite.
Yeah. This good thing this isn't a business podcast.
Yeah. Because it was a completely intuitive thing. It was... we were wanted... Like our realtor wanted to show us this building that we're in right now. And at first, it wasn't in alignment. We said no.
For 6 months.
We didn't even want to look at it. We needed to go venture off and explore other things that were kind of calling us to then one day, I remember distinctively saying to Eden, we've got to look at that place now. And we came and took one step into it, and we knew this was it. But when we bought this place, it was just this building. It wasn't the grounds at all.
In fact, the building envelope for this particular structure that we're in is not much bigger than the envelope of the actual physical structure itself. So there wasn't much land.
Not much to work with.
And, you know, and coming in here, we knew this was it. But then it was the questions coming in. What do we want to do with it? We have 2 floors. So what do we want to put back here? And so that's when that creative process just starts going. But then the property, a small part of the property around us came up. It was being foreclosed on. And so then it was like, okay, Spirit just handed us this. We've got to say yes to it.
Was that like the garden area or?
Some of it.
Some of the garden?
It was essentially from 3rd Street here to 2nd Street, and from this building to the bike path. So it was kind of a long, thin piece.
Like a strip.
Doesn't include the present Kiva parcel, which is the 3rd parcel of property. We have 4 properties now that are all connected. And in the case of the property that the Kiva's on, because we didn't know we were going to have a Kiva, an event space for 100 people with an attached luxury spa, we didn't know that.
Yeah. So when you did, that's a kind of blows my mind when I hear about, these kind of creative projects. You know, for me, like I've got visions. Did you have visions collectively? It was just like, what was the vision? And
well,
like Eden may have had some visions. I didn't have visions of like, we kind of like worked with what we had.
What was presenting itself moment to moment. And
we didn't have dreams of, we never could have dreamt this. It just wasn't there.
But what did happen is that life itself presented challenges and simultaneously the solutions to those challenges. And so, for example, with the Kiva property, we had 4 to 6 classes a day upstairs, but we wanted up here for our yoga program. But we wanted to have workshops because we love giving workshops, leading them. We love having wonderful teachers from all over the world come and teach here. But we couldn't necessarily have longer events because it would interrupt our daily flow. So it was before a sweat lodge ceremony that Deva and I were connecting and channeling, Deva is able to connect with invisible guides. And so I
don't like calling them invisible.
Well,
it sounds like they're visible.
Few.
Yeah. Invisible to you.
Not in physical form.
Not in physical
They're
form.
not invisible.
I like saying that better.
Spiritual.
Yeah.
And so it was, a few hours before the sweat was about to begin. No one else was there. And we would often vision together with the help of these guides who weren't in physical form. And so I asked the questions, and Deva would answer the questions with the support of the guide. And so this particular guide came in on that day, and I asked the question, what do we need to do to finish out True Nature Healing Arts? What's our next step? And the guide said, you need a space in the center of the Peace Garden to marry heaven and earth, a ceremonial space in the center of the Peace Garden to marry heaven and earth. And what popped up in my head was, you mean like a Native American kiva? And the guide answered yes. And so we let that incubate for a time. I don't even know if we had that property at that time. The owner of that property used to own this property many years ago, and he loved what we did with his property so much that before he put this kiva piece on the market, he came to us and said, hey, I really appreciate what you did with my property. Are you interested in purchasing more property? And we said yes, and that became the kiva and the spa piece. So now, where we started out 500 square feet in 2007 on Main Street, went to the 3rd Street Center for a couple of years and expanded to 1,500 square feet. Now we have over an acre of property with a peace garden and 2 structures, this center building with a boutique, with an organic cafe and classes upstairs where we are now, and then a kiva event space for seminars, workshops, retreats, performing arts, and rites of passage, and then a spa as well.
And none of this was ever in the plans.
There was no plan.
No plan.
Except to listen. To see how we could be of service.
Mm-hmm.
Do either of you have any role models in your lives who have lived in such a way that has been kind of planless and more intuitively yes, no, little steps?
Not for me, no.
I mean, my dad was a developer. He was a land developer and a shopping center developer. And so I got to see projects start out in their seed form, and over 5 to 7 years eventually end up with us as a family at the opening of a shopping center. I mean, it would take 5 to 7 years when he first started with the idea with his partner, and then began negotiating with the people in the community to see if something like that could happen. Well, here we are 12 years into this process, and it's still unfolding, and it will continue to unfold based upon our needs and the needs of the people who are coming to participate.
Yeah, well, I think that, for me, connecting with you guys, I see you guys as definite models to structure life after, because, we kind of live in this business plan world where you got to really plan it out and map it out and intellectualize it and figure it out. But that doesn't really work reliably. And what does work reliably, and I'm learning more and more as I navigate my life, is tuning in like you guys have articulated, and following the yeses and closing off to the no's. So thank you for showing the world that you can survive doing that, and not only survive, you can thrive and create real meaningful stuff.
And it's not easy to have your business plan follow the creative plan, I have to share. We've been working very, very hard, and here we are since 2012, let's say, because we bought the land in October of 2011, but really started to have programming upstairs with yoga in 2012. And here we are in 2019, and last year we saw like 21, 22% growth. And this year we're seeing well over 30% growth. Could even be 40% growth this year, just in terms of people coming and appreciating, most of it by word of mouth.
Absolutely. It's kind of reminds me of the, what is it? If you build it, they will come sort of story.
I just had a yoga student talk about that today. That this is the field of dreams moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I am hesitant to even ask you I'm not going to ask you what the plans are for the future, of course. But I will just ask, do you feel, like, yes or no, do you feel that things are like finished in terms of true nature healing arts?
The best way to put it, for now.
Yeah.
For this moment. But we've been shown things we need to do for the future to kind of like tidy up, to complete this process of this creation. And but we're waiting for things to align and for it to be ready, for it to be the time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll be here alongside you, the community, seeing things unfold. So I do know that you guys have a retreat in Costa Rica next year.
We do.
Is that a first kind of, you mentioned leading things individually, I don't know, and collected and together you've also done some retreats like this, or is this?
Yeah, this is our first retreat somewhere else, you know, and it's going to be great, a week long down in Costa Rica, which we love. Costa Rica is like our second home, and we love it down there in Nosara. And so we're really looking forward to it. And awesome. It's sold out already.
Oh,
so
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So sorry, listeners. So
we're planning the next year.
There's always another one, it sounds like. So what is the focus, or what's happening in this week?
In this week? The week of the retreat?
The retreat week.
It's really just about supporting a space for people to deepen within themselves and to reestablish those connections. Sometimes we have to get away out of our daily life in order to like regroup and reconnect and find purpose.
And also bringing the skills and the tools of yoga into our daily life. Because it's really not about sitting on the cushion or practicing yoga on the mat or going to a retreat. It's really, how do we take what we learn and integrate it, assimilate it, so that we can actualize it and live it in our lives. And so that's what Deva and I really work at every day, is how we can incorporate what we're learning into our lives and then share that with the people. So there'll be great yoga classes led by Deva. I like to share meditation and yoga philosophy. We do a lot of co-teaching together based upon our life experience, but guided by the scriptures of the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and the Vedas and such. And so we'll be doing a lot of chanting, a lot of bhakti or devotion. We both love to share sacred sound. And, of course, sunsets and time in the ocean. It's just so gorgeous. And while we're at it, I'd also like to share that starting in January, we'll have our 6th yoga teacher training as well, a 200-hour. But what's nice about our yoga teacher training is that it happens over 5 months, 5 long weekends. So it really gives students the time to learn new things and then practice them for a full month before we get together again, so that once again it's not this fire hose taking 10 or 20% of what you're learning after you've done a fire hose week-long or 2-week-long training, but it's this longer process of how can you make this a part of your life, because that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of applying these practices, these beautiful ancient healing practices to our daily lives.
Right. So agree. And not just reserving it to an hour class once or twice a week. Yeah. Well, on that note, just kind of tying things together here, I'm curious if you do have any, teachings or words of wisdom in terms of bringing yoga into moment-to-moment life, or bringing whatever you'd like to call it, devotion, or, obviously you've shared a lot of really powerful truths in terms of aligning with that true yes and allowing that to guide. And I think if that's all we do,
right.
we'll be set, but on top of that, or in addition, how might listeners bring some yoga or intentionality into their day-to-day?
The number one thing is just to watch your breath. And so, like, something that I teach clients when we're working together is whenever you touch a door handle, because we go through so many doors all the time, car door, your bathroom door. Whenever you touch a door handle, that's when you should be like connecting and making sure you're in your body, making sure you're grounded, take a deep breath, and then enter wherever you're going. So the door handle can become a reminder of, connect. Because that's yoga. Yoga is just how do you use these tools to unite you, to regroup, to yoke.
And another really simple thing is just to spend time contemplating, whether it's through meditation or journaling or talking with the people that you love, really reflecting upon what things that you love to do and what makes you happy, what comes easy to you, not what you have to work 8 years to try to figure out how to do, but what do you do that comes natural, because that's much more in alignment with your dharma, because you're built for it. Some people are built to be ballerinas, and some people baseball players, and some doctors, and some truck drivers, and when you're doing what it is that you were designed for, there's an ease, there's a freedom to that. It's like you don't have to become the master of that. You were designed for it. So really spending time thinking about what it is that you're already gifted at, and share those gifts with the world.
That's really refreshing, because I think I know I've been told like to strengthen my weaknesses. And I don't like doing that. It's not fun. It's not fun. Can't I just have fun doing what I'm good at? And I think that the answer is yes. And I'm remembering that, each and every day. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And just for people out there listening, tuning in, obviously they can find out more about True Nature on the website. And I know I follow Instagram, which is a great feed at True Nature Healing Arts. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's it.
Is that it? And the website again is True Nature Healing Arts too.
Yeah, TrueNatureHealingArts.com.
All right. And where might any other kind of places where people might be able to connect with you two, or know what you guys are up to, or is that kind of the go-to hub?
That's the go-to hub. Yeah.
Great.
You'll see all the events that we have going on. And
yeah. And Dave and I are doing a Sacred Sound once a month, which is a wonderful community event that's free to the public. And people can come. We do mantras. We do West African chants, Native American chants. We meditate. We tell stories about our lives and about the deities that we're singing to. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. We close it with a gong bath, and that happens in the Kiva. So it's just coming and participating in the community.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for creating the space and also bringing the energy that's so nourishing into the space, and supporting a healthy and vibrant Carbondale community. And also, I trust that this is rippling out, obviously, in the valley here, but beyond that, people coming and visiting, and teachers passing through and feeling it and taking and sharing. So thanks for being a part of this raising of the vibration and consciousness in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, peace and love. And until next time.